Hey everyone, it's Gurky, but I'm wearing a blaze orange hoodie. Poker. There are a lot of things that make this game fun and addicting, but when the cards are left on the table and we're out of chips, what can we really take away from the game? Is there anything that we can surmise from our experience of losing or winning a ton of money? Now, I'm not a poker expert myself, and I never hope to actually be one, but I thought I would bring somebody along on this video that is a good friend of mine, and he has way more poker knowledge than I could ever hope to dream of. Now, my goal for this video isn't to give you the best winning strategies for poker, nor is it to give you the best mathematical odds for winning a hand in poker. A lot of that comes down to skill and a little bit of luck. No, my goal for this video is to lay out some of the anecdotal parts of poker that you may be able to take over to your personal life, right? The main goal of this channel is to get excited about games, but also to take applicable skills and apply them to our actual lives. Okay, cool. So today we're talking with Surreal, one of my buddies. I've known him for a while. Surreal, thanks for coming on and talking about poker.
Happy to jump in and have a fun conversation. As you know, poker has become a huge part of my life. A very important hobby, maybe a one-day career, but we might kind of get to some pieces of that. But regardless, I'm happy to be here and talk about a subject I care a lot about, which is a little bit of poker.
So one of the things when I first started poker that was really difficult for me to understand was I can't win every single hand. I may have ace king, ace queen, pocket nines, pocket tens, and those are in the premium hand selection, right? My thought is when we go through our lives and we think that we have the premium hand or we have the best odds of succeeding in certain scenarios, that we shouldn't discount the element of chance in our lives. One way to look at it is we should always be looking forward and having a game plan if we do succeed or if we do fail, right? We should always be planning ahead, no matter what, even if we think we have the best odds. Life can turn on a dime for us, and then all of a sudden the odds aren't in our favor.
One thing that's interesting about poker is that it's very dynamic. Things are constantly changing, especially when new cards are being added in the mix. And so whether we're playing, my hand versus all the possible hands you could have, once we get to the flop and those 3 new cards are put out there, everything changes. My hand now becomes way better. It has a higher chance of winning. Or my hand becomes way worse. It has a lower chance of winning. Or my hand's not really changed, but that, flop 3 cards might be extremely bad for all the cards you have. And thus, my hand is doing better. Or maybe that flop of cards is really bad for my hand, and now I'm not looking so good in that regard as well. And so not only do we think about how the possible hands we have is interacting with each other, we have to also think about how various different flops, turns, and rivers can completely change the landscape and your odds of winning or losing a certain hand. Not to mention, beyond just that math, the math of, well, if I just bluff here, what are the odds the guy folds as well? And so there's a human element as well, beyond just the odds of what the cards kind of lay out for you.
So speaking of the human element, when we do things in our day-to-day lives, we may have a game plan. Just like in poker, we have a game plan. Hopefully, when we go into the table, we may, depending on our scenario, it may change. For instance, I thought that I was going to be doing real estate when I came and started living in a new region. And what I found out was, hey, maybe my love of games, this has more of a correlation with coding. And I seeked out a mentor, and that mentor was a coding, someone who was working in the field of coding. So it can totally change. Life can totally change, just like the aspects of poker can totally change once that flop comes, when the turn comes, when the river comes.
Well, and just to carry that on, and I think you really bring a good point, bringing life to poker, because in my eyes, there's a lot of similarities between life and poker. And it's some very important, unique lessons that poker is uniquely situated to teach compared to other disciplines or aspects of our life. And so what I mean by that would be, like in real life, and like you're mentioning, having a plan, having a game plan, already knowing what you're going to do before you even get to the table. That can be like life too. We can be perfectly prepared, have all of our ducks in a row, all of our perfect plans, and even with all of that, we can still fail. Poker, like life, doesn't really care about what you deserve or don't deserve.
Yeah.
Poker, like life, you can do everything correct and still not reach your goals, but it doesn't mean they're not worth trying for. And at the same point in time, you might look and see someone who's doing everything wrong and failing upwards in their life, but that's not something we can control. One thing that poker teaches us is that no matter how we think something's going to go, whether it's a poker session, a poker tournament, a poker career, a life career, life plans, moving, all these things, life can do anything to them. Like the cards can fall any which way. And even with all this perfect preparation, we still might not find ourselves where we want to be, but that's okay. Because what it is teaching us is, in order to put ourselves in the best possible chance for success, we have to lay the groundwork. I might not win every time I sit down at the table to play poker, but I know that if I am better studied than my opponents, better prepared than my opponents, have a better mindset than my opponents, I am going to do better in the long run. And I believe that's the same thing with life. If you are better prepared, have a better mindset, and are more able to handle adversity, there is going to be down points. It's just unavoidable. It's just how life is. That's just what luck is. But if you're prepared mentally, and you've done all the right steps, if it doesn't work out the first time, second time, the third time, you're still on that path to success. And I think that's really interesting way that poker uniquely can show us that you do everything right and still lose. You do everything wrong and still win. But what matters in the long run is really doing things the right way.
And that leads really well into the second point. When do we know when to quit? When is the right time to quit? When is the most optimal time to quit something?
When we're playing poker, we have to remind ourselves that, again, it is a zero-sum game where any mistake you're making has dollars going to your opponents, and every mistake they're making is dollars going to you or the other players at your table. And so what we have to realize is poker is not only about being a good player. If you're the 9th best player in the world and you're playing with the top 8, you're a loser in that game. They are better than you, and by the nature of poker, if your opponents are better than you, in the long run, you are losing. And so it doesn't matter how good you are at the game. You can be one of the best players in the world, one of the greatest of all time, but if the game is too good, the players are too strong, then it's not a game you should be playing. And so when it comes to making selections for which games we should play, which games we shouldn't play, which games worth the time in a sense, we have to make sure that the game itself is beatable, that the players in the game are worse than us, and that it's actually worth the time to be there. And a game can start out that way. You could be playing a cash game at the casino, and for the first 3 hours, 2 hours, 4 hours, however long you want to make it, you can be crushing the game. All the players are worse than you. You know how they're worse than you. You know exactly where you are winning and how you're making money from these players. But let's say those players eventually, they get up and they leave, they lost too much money, and a bunch of really strong players sit down behind them. Well, now in this new game, these very strong players are better than you, and now you're losing. There's no need and no reason to stay in that game if your goal is to make money. And at that point, you should leave. Now, I will add one important caveat, is that if your goal is improvement and not just maximizing the money you're making, then there is some merit in playing against better players because you will inevitably pick up a thing or two from playing against them. And so sometimes we can leave, and if that's the case, do it if it's best for you. But sometimes we can't leave. And if that's the case, then you gotta make the best of that situation. and keep doing well even facing adversity, which again tracks closer to real life.
Now, an important caveat that is kind of touched on in this interview is that we can't quit every scenario. You know, in life, we can't necessarily quit our job. Sometimes we have obligations in our personal lives. When we're in those scenarios, we need to make the best odds for us to succeed. Even if it means that we don't necessarily win the scenario, we can still improve our lives incrementally bit by bit. It takes bravery and determination to execute those plans. Like sometimes we put ourselves in positions in life and we think that, everything, all hope is lost. I'm stuck here and I can't leave. You know, I'm, perpetually in this position. I thought that I was stuck. Like in my own personal life, I thought I was stuck. And then I found out over the course of the next few years that it's like, hey, no, you're not actually stuck in life. You can, change aspects of where you're at. Though it may be like incremental changes, over time, those changes definitely stack on each other. And then eventually you're in a position where like you are in a better spot in life, or in a more advantageous spot in life, or maybe it's the spot that you want to be in life. Maybe it's not advantageous, but it's where you want to be.
Life, like your poker skill level, is a journey. There is no easy path. It's a lot of hard work, and it's small micro improvements. It's getting better each day. When it comes to poker, I am way, way better than I was during COVID, even a couple of years ago, hell, even 6 months ago. That's because I work on my game constantly, and I'm putting in, on average, an hour, 2 hours a day just studying the game itself. And I might not feel like I've gained anything from an individual particular session, but it's just that repeated process of getting up and trying to be better, like you talked about with your life, like I'm mentioning with poker here. It's just the same. You're not going to see big changes overnight. No one goes to the gym and works out and is buff the next day. It takes time, commitment, dedication, and a real want to improve. Life, poker, anything worth pursuing, honestly, I think fits that category.
One thing to note about poker pros is that they are in the top 10%. And when you look at the game as a whole, that's actually a pretty big chunk of people. But it's not everybody. That means 90% of poker players are actually losing. Because again, poker is a zero-sum game. You're either winning or you are losing. And 90% of players are losing in the long run. There's over millions and millions of hands, mind you, not just a small sample size. So if you've played poker for a short period of time and you've generally been losing, that's just the smallest sample size.
What I want to talk about is poker is hard. It's not easy to get good at. Most players are losing. 90 to 95% of poker players are losing in the long run. And most poker players think they're winning. If anyone wants to play poker seriously, now there are benefits for learning the game and enjoying the game, but if you want to do this professionally, you have to have a plan, you have to want it, you have to know how you're going to study, how you're going to put in volume. Your roadmap for improvement has to be there. You have to have fun set aside. You have to do things responsibly. And if I'm being honest, as much as I would recommend anybody who listens to this to play poker recreationally, learn about the game, enjoy the game, trying to be a professional poker player seems, to me, who's been trying to do it now for a few years and learning, absolutely nightmarish. And I would not recommend it. And only those who say, F you, I still want to do it, are those who I think should seriously consider trying to be a professional at the game. But again, you don't have to be a professional at the game to still get all the things we talked about out of the game and learn as much as you can, about poker and how it transcribes to life.
You gotta look at it in the long run. Just like in life, you may be losing this week, but you can definitely work towards winning in the long term, right? this game is definitely a roller coaster. And even when you're winning, there are still things like when you're on top of the world and you think you're a god, you go back the next day and you study your hands and you realize, I was a donkey. Why did I do that?
There are so many times I go back thinking I played a hand perfectly, only to see that I was wrong. I did consider X, Y, and Z. And that's why it's important for me to have a support group. I have friends who enjoy poker and study poker as well, and I use them as a resource as they use me, where we discuss and really make sure that we're on top of things. Because, again, one unique thing about poker, which is, again, analogous to life, is that you can do the right thing and get a bad result and not know it. You don't know that you did the right thing. All you know is you got punished. And like real life in poker, you can do the wrong thing and win the hand. You can always get lucky. And like in real life, you can screw up and fail upwards. We all know that one person who seems like just a chronic mess, and yet they just keep finding success. And that's okay.
I'm enjoying the ride currently as is when it comes to poker. I'd say my overall goal in life, not just in poker, is to help people understand the joy of gaming, and understand how can you take, just like this, what this video is about, take the things that we're learning in the game and try to apply them to our real life. Because at the end of the day, if we decide I don't want to play poker anymore, we can still take those away. It goes back to one thing that I had learned from somebody like a long time ago. I can't even remember who it was. After the consequences of your actions have been revealed, what did you learn? And if you can't learn anything from that, then what the hell are you doing? Like, that's generally the concept, and that's a scary concept, because there are many times where I see myself going and doing something, and then at the end of the day, I sit down and I try to reflect on what happened during the day. And if I can't get anything back from that, that is startling. There should always be something that we can gain from that, so that we can keep progressing forward, not just in studying poker, not just in studying game theory, but just our life. Yeah.
And that's a really important thing I would say for the listeners too, is that at the end of the day, it is an activity that costs money. You can play poker for fun. And in fact, if you're at all interested, there are numerous websites to do so. I'd recommend it. But proper poker that's going to feel like poker is going to have some stakes attached, and never gamble beyond your means. And the best and most healthy way to think about it, especially when you're a new player and you know that you're not a winning player in the long run, then anything lost is just an entertainment fee. Anything we do for fun, many things. A nice dinner, going to see a movie, laser tag, go-karts, going golfing with friends. All these activities cost money, and that's your fee for entertainment. If for you, poker is that fee, so be it. But do it responsibly and within your means. That's another huge aspect is to being a poker player, both recreationally and professionally, is don't go broke. Do it within your means. It's supposed to be a game, not a way to spiral your life out of control, which can be the case for any kind of gambling.
It doesn't matter what age you are, but I think this is especially important to the people who are in their 20s or younger, is we look at people who are older than us and we look at them and say, oh, you have a lot of experience. But really, they have a lot of time under their belt to have experienced life. We may think when we turn 30, that's the end of it, right? The rest of our life, we're gonna just be working, and we're not gonna really find time to enjoy ourselves, right? And we have lost by the time we've hit 30. But I think that's when we should be hitting our stride, actually. That's when we should have cultivated enough experience. We've had some fun in our 20s. We've really figured out what we want to do with our lives, and we're going forward with the ultimate game plan, right? It doesn't mean that we can't pivot to different strategies, or when we see that we might be losing in certain areas of our life, we can't change ourselves. It's not like we're set in stone when we hit a certain age, right? I like to think of it in terms of XP, right? And leveling. I've hit level 27 in my life, right? I'm a level 27 nerd who loves video games. That's the way that I think is the healthiest to think about myself and also to think about other people too, right? We're not completed at any particular age. We can still cultivate levels. We can still develop a different strategy for our lives. And I think that ultimately is the point of this video. So what did I learn from poker? I've learned that we need to develop a tenacity. We need to develop a skilled understanding of when to pivot our strategies. And that we don't deserve to win, but we can certainly cultivate an attitude of tenacity and perseverance that can ultimately get us through the rest of our lives. I hope that this video was insightful to you, and I can't wait to share other things that I've learned in other games that I've played. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.